Welcome to the Spoon Podcast, where we talk to the builders and makers on the front lines of the food tech revolution. I'm your host, Michael Wolf. Today's guest is Amy Taylor, the CEO of Zevia, one of the original better-for-you brands in the space. Amy's been in the beverage space for most of her career, including Red Bull. She was there during the rise of that brand as it really kind of defined the energy drink category. And now, leading Zevia, she's looking to navigate where this brand goes in the future. And so we talk about that, the space, and talk about the new terrain that a lot of food brands are navigating nowadays. I hope you enjoy it. If you haven't already signed up for Smart Kid to Summit, please go there and check it out. You can use the discount code podcast for 15% off. Amy Taylor will be there speaking on one of the sessions alongside a lot of other great speakers as well. So check it out. I hope to see you there. All right, folks, let's get to our conversation with Amy Taylor. All right, tell us who you are and what you do.
Hi, I'm Amy Taylor, and I'm the CEO of Zevia PBC. We're a B Corp, and we make a lot of yummy, tasty, zero sugar, clean label sodas, and we make them affordable for households across North America.
And just before I hit record, you're drinking a brand new flavor representing?
That's right. Cheers, cheers. Representing, as always. This afternoon is a little strawberry lemon burst. I started the day with a cherry cola. So up and down the flavor wheel today.
I would say I've been a long time drinker of Zevia. I mean, I have over the past decade tried to eliminate a lot of artificial sweeteners, but I think Zevia is why I like it, because it's natural. It's one of those things I don't feel guilty about. I don't think there's a weird chemical there. And so you guys are one of the OGs in the space, right?
Yeah, we are the OG, I have to say. I mean, this is kind of wild to operate in this 100-plus-year-old category of carbonated soft drinks with 95% household penetration. And yet all of this, century, I suppose, and the last century, there's been this tension between health and taste. You had to pick one.
Yeah.
Right. And so, okay, maybe you had some ways to avoid sugar, but then all of a sudden you're drinking funky stuff that people weren't really sure if it was all that good for you. And I think over time it became clear that it wasn't. And so the quandary was always well, can we make a naturally sweetened beverage that doesn't have sugar? And that became kind of tough, I think. And then Zevia came along. And honestly, there's this couple that invented Zevia literally in their kitchen to solve Diet Cola addiction, and then the rest is history. Now we're making products all across kind of the various soda flavor profiles, and then into some of these newer spaces that are kind of the on-trend flavors, light and fruity and creamy flavors, all without sugar and without any artificial ingredients.
It's nice to drink something that isn't full of sugar, but also isn't industrial cleaner based sweetener, whatever that.
Whatever the other stuff is. Yeah. That'll shine the copper off a penny. Yeah. I don't think we want that.
But since you guys launched, I think a decade plus ago, I think it was Patty started or was one of the original founders. And then, the space has moved so far, and I love going to the drink aisle. I think I mentioned this on Mike Lee's podcast last week. I love going to that drink aisle and just staring at it for 10 minutes because it's such a fun space. There's so many drinks coming out. What do you think of the world you're in? How is Zevia evolving to kind of meet the moment? Because there's the Olipops and the poppies, the microbiome better for you drinks, and you guys are still this great offering. But how do you guys keep yourself current?
Yeah, it has changed so much. Now, first of all, to go back a little bit, the idea of new hot functional beverages on the market, it's not actually new. I mean, let's consider the first functional beverage to be coffee, 1,000+ years old, right? And then, when Coca-Cola came along, it was, a fizzy lifting drink to borrow language from Willy Wonka, but it made promises functionally. And then Gatorade is a functional beverage, right? From an isotonic and hydration and replacement. And Red Bull was the original energy drink. So functional beverages have been with us for a long time. Bull, right? Yeah, I worked at Red Bull. I started there in 1999. My stepdad warned me not to take the job because he had never heard of the company. And I said, I think there's something special here. And, usually he was right, but on this one I got him. Right?
You said, okay, boomer, I'll take this job.
Okay, boomer. But he was a boomer. So I didn't listen to the boomer in that moment. So I took my Gen X assignment of creating this Red Bull brand with an American lens on it for the American audience. And I left there in 2020. I was the president and chief marketing officer, and I'd been the head of marketing for many years and had an amazing experience. But really what I learned there was about creating a hot brand and sort of becoming a part of or creating communication within and around the zeitgeist, if you will. So when I learned about Zevia, and I thought, well, gosh, Red Bull was like right on time for Gen X in the late 90s and at the turn of the century, like burning the candle at both ends, always in need of energy,
Yeah.
not thinking too much about what you put in your body, right? And then when I look at millennial consumers in particular, and then you could argue even more so with Gen Z, they're thoughtful about what they're putting in their body. This move away from sugar is here to stay. That is the macro in all of this, is that society, globally, we are moving away from sugar consumption. We now understand sugar's impact. And I'm not talking about obesity and body type. I'm talking about liver and kidney health and
Diabetes, cancer,
diet. Yes, real disease state, root
dementia, like,
cause.
yeah,
Yes,
crazy
yes.
stuff. Yeah.
And some of this is proven and some of this hypothesized, but either way, what seems to be unilaterally accepted across science, across jurisdiction, is that sugar's bad and we're going to get away from it. So then what's the solution? Because people still want a bubbly treat, and as do I, multiple times a day. And what's cool, and then I'm going to get back to your what's going on in beverage. What's cool is like sugar is just a plant. It comes from cane sugar. That just happens to be the plant that we societally decided was going to sweeten our food and our beverage. And there's another one, and it's called stevia. And it's a member of the sunflower family, right? And it
Mm-hmm.
uses 1/10 the water that does cane sugar. But most importantly, it doesn't spike your glycemic index. It has no negative health impacts.
Which is,
So
yeah. And I, by the way, I just started wearing this glucose monitor and I'd never paid attention to my glycemic index before. I'm like, holy crap. Like so many things just
it's a
spike
freaking roller
the heck out of.
coaster.
Yeah. It scares the crap out of me. So now I'm like paying super attention to it. And I want to get
That's
to what
awesome.
my early question was,
Yes, thank you.
where you are, but I have to ask you about the
Okay.
Red Bull journey, because
Sure.
those crazy commercials, like they almost remind me of like getting to the center of the owl licking the lollipop.
Well, Toasty
You had the,
Pop. Good.
yeah,
That's a good throwback, Gen X.
you had that weird cartoon thing. Were
Cartoon.
you there at the beginning of that decision when they made that decision?
I wasn't in the room where it happened, as I guess Hamilton said, but like I was there when we decided if or whether we would embrace that campaign for the United States in the very early goings and then help to evolve it to continue its cultural relevance. But that's one of the longest running campaigns of any brand anywhere ever, and one of the most consistent globally. And the objective was to keep Red Bull gives you wings top of mind. So it was wildly successful in its
It
objective,
was.
regardless of what you think about the creative.
No, and it was successful, and you deserve a lot of kudos for helping fuel that. And when was the moment when you guys realized, oh my gosh, Red Bull is becoming like a cultural zeitgeist thing? Because it
I
did.
I feel like I saw that coming when I joined the company, even though it wasn't present in the United States yet. And the reason is that the brand, and it really ladders back to the founder, decided that he wanted and they wanted to treat the consumer with respect, right? And go out with some level of consistency
Imagine
and
that.
authenticity. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. But going out with a level of authenticity, which now is a marketing buzzword, but back then it wasn't. And instead of trying to like go fast and hard and drive distribution and awareness at all costs, the brand, as funny as the sound, was building relationships. And of course, it was the organization that was building relationships. But the brand started to mean something to key communities, and then bubbling out from each of those communities that happen to, of course, be innovators across sports and culture and otherwise. That's how you start to sew yourself into the zeitgeist and help to shape culture, not just have sort of a dialogue about cultures. Yeah, it was really cool to spend 20 years building a brand that I think became very meaningful to a lot of people.
Yeah,
And now the
it
opportunity,
defined the energy drink space. I
yeah,
feel like Red Bull was the
it
drink.
defined the category, and then I think it did more than that too, kind of punching above its weight as a consumer packaged good, and really became a brand that was a bit of a mark of an attitude and a lifestyle. And that was so wild when I got a call. You mentioned Patty, to join the Zevia board, because I was like, I already did beverage. I did this for 20 years. I should go do like something in my
You're like, I'm
passion,
tired. I
sports.
want to do something
Yeah,
new.
yeah, exactly. I was like, I don't want to do things in cans anymore, right? But then when Patty started explaining the mission, and then I started meeting more people on the board and found that the commitment was quite authentic and long-term in nature. And then I started meeting the folks in the organization, and like, this crew's on a mission. Like, we are going to materially reduce sugar consumption among the population that we serve. Like, materially. If a family switches from carbonated soft drinks, traditional carbonated soft drinks, to Zevia, they can cut their sugar consumption in half with that one move. And I just put myself in the seat of like a millennial parent And there's so much pressure coming from all directions to do everything right, like then amplified on TikTok and Instagram,
Yeah.
just to be perfect, right? And we're just kind of like, you know what? We're going to keep it radically real. Like, we just invite you to make this one decision that's just a little bit better. Like, it's a hack to health on the way to a better lifestyle. And so when I learned about this, and I thought, gosh, if this amazing product proposition could have the kind of brand heat that I learned how to create over the last couple of decades, and it takes time, it
It
takes
does.
time and
Yep.
consistency and patience, then this is like a really meaningful opportunity. And I couldn't not do it. I had to do it.
So you decided to take the role, and
Yeah.
getting back to that question that I talked about, how you evolve and how you are evolving to meet kind of the moment where there's all these
Yeah.
new things coming out that are like, hey, make our gut healthier and all these better for you drinks. So how is Zevia kind of meeting that moment? Because you guys were OG, and I
Yeah.
still think it's such an important brand. I think stevia is like recognized as like such a healthy sweetener alternative,
Yeah.
but the space is changing.
It has changed so much. So we'll bring this whole thing up to modern day. So we've been around solving the greatest tension in the category, which is between health and taste, for a small, passionate, loyal consumer base for a while now. And haven't really invested in brand and top of mind awareness, etc. So what I'm proud that the organization did prior to my arrival is really drive national distribution, not just in the natural channel, but into conventional, kind of proved that what at the time was considered to be a niche, better for you product could exist in carbonated soft drinks on mainstream shelves in mainstream grocery stores and hold its own. And then started doing really well on Amazon. And the reason I mentioned these specific channels and customers is these are just proof points that this is not just a natural channel shopper. The
Yeah.
people that drink Zevia are not just eating like kale chips and,
No.
tree hugging on the weekends. They're like buying Oreos as a treat and shopping for the family and, again, keeping it real. So what's happened in the last few years, though, to your point, is an explosion of better for you sodas. Now, many of them and some of the hotter ones kind of coming out of COVID and come off of social media for some really sharp entrepreneurs are gut health brands, right? And whether or not prebiotics or probiotics in the form of a soda post manufacturing do anything for your gut is almost irrelevant, because what's happening is people are putting literally hundreds of millions of dollars into the marketplace to seed with the consumer the idea that soda could be better for you. So then our job, in addition to building an awesome brand that is trusted and here for the long haul, is to be like the best tasting, to be relevant across usage occasions, not just for the gut health moment, which I would not recommend doing that all day, every day. But with our product, you can drink it really for any usage occasion and as frequently as you want. Tasting great, always zero sugar, not just, let's say 60 calories or 8 to 10 grams of sugar, but zero sugar and zero calories. And then affordable. And I think this is a critical distinction, is that families can grab a
Yeah.
12 pack of Zevia and throw it in the fridge and share
Yeah.
it with the family. They're not $3 and $4 a can. And this is a significant distinction on the shelves of Walmart and all across America, that, better for you products should be for everyone.
Yeah, that's a huge point that you make, because I made this point talking about the challenge with these new better for you brands in the drink case that I love to just linger by is they're not often helping the people that need the help the most, like low income families that are drinking, kind of over indexing on their sugar, eating unhealthy CPG products. And, it's great when high income earners can buy all this expensive $3 bottle
100%
pops,
agree.
but most people can't.
Exactly.
A lot of people can. So I think that's,
And we're trying to solve this societally by like taxing or sugar, or disallowing the use of snap against carbonated soft drinks. But now we're actually penalizing twice the lowest earners, right? Here is a shelf stable hydrating product with all natural ingredients that have no sugar. Like, that ought to be on the shelves and affordable for everyone, right? And so if we want to regulate or monitor how much sugar we're going to consume as a society, we need to think all the way up and down the socioeconomic ladder and up and down earners, and ensure that we're making better for you, clean label, zero sugar products available for everybody. And so
I got
we're
a
super
question for it.
passionate about that.
I've often wondered why big CPG brands don't make the move to just fast follow in a space that just makes so much sense. So why isn't Coca-Cola or Pepsi? I don't think they put out, maybe I'm wrong, have they put out a stevia drink? Because it seems like, most stuff I see from them is sucralose or more traditional, like carcinogen, cancer causing
Yeah.
types of sweeteners. Hopefully I don't get sued. Maybe it's not sucralose, but some, kind of old saccharin type of base
Yeah.
drinks. I see that from those guys. I don't see like things with like more natural flavors, more
Yeah,
natural sweeteners.
most of the big guys have at one point or another, somewhere in some corner of the world, played with a naturally sweetened version of their big mainstream brands, And so you may see a diet Coke or Pepsi in a green tinted can that is
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
communicated to be natural and has a sweetener like stevia in some jurisdiction. If you were to ask me why hasn't that been successful, why hasn't that been scaled, I would really just kind of point to like permissions from the brand. Does the brand have permission from the consumer to bring that product to market? And I would argue,
Are we still feeling the ramifications of New Coke? Are we still feeling that lesson 30 years later?
you
Like
know,
they're scared to death of the changing the formula?
I would say it's less a new Coke lesson and it's more like Coke energy
Okay.
lesson, right? Because Coca-Cola was unsuccessful in launching an energy drink as a fighter against Monster and Red Bull and Celsius and all this tremendous growth in that energy drink category, but it's just not what the consumer expects from that brand.
Okay.
The consumer doesn't know who manufactures what. If Coke and Fanta and Sprite are all under the same house of brands, what they're paying attention to is the brand itself. What will be interesting now in this new better for you space, as you know, Pepsi has acquired Poppy, and then Coca-Cola is entering the space with their own
Yep.
brand of a gut health soda at a higher price point and sort of a fruity looking can. And so will that become a meaningful brand? So each of the two big guys are taking a different approach. One is innovating, one is acquiring. But I tell you what, I think it is the dawn of the small focused brand. And I think we
Yeah.
are really seeing that right, left, and center. And we are small and focused. We have less than 100 people in
Oh,
our
wow.
organization. We are distributed in 40,000 outlets across the US and Canada, and we are scrappy as hell. And we just got national distribution at Walmart. We are growing in our traditional channels.
Congrats.
We are
Congrats.
growing, thank you, through innovation. We are winning new consumers, and we are now finally starting to really build a brand and having the ability to invest in that brand. And I think this current and next generation, they most of all value trust. And so to get back to the top of your question, like, what can I trust each of these various entities to deliver to me? I mean, some of the big guys can deliver me a super yummy and sugary treat. Cool. You've been doing that for
That's a
100
great,
years.
yeah.
Yeah, but if I want a clean label, I'm going to get the halo effect from a trusted brand. That's
Yeah.
kind of where we can play and where we should play.
Is the millennials and then the Gen Zs, they're cynical, they're sophisticated, and they kind of know what's going on. So it seems like sometimes when like a Coca-Cola tries to offer their version of what has become a category creator, like a Zevia or something, it
Yeah.
seems like oftentimes that generation is saying, no, you guys are just kind of like, you're just trying to like fake it or fast follow or whatever. Like you're not the authentic
Yeah.
version of what we want.
I think it's actually Gen X that's pretty cynical, but millennials and Gen Z are skeptical. And I
Okay.
think wisely so. And I'm wordsmithing a little bit here, but really the point is this is a far more informed consumer. Blame the internet, social media, whatever you will. But these generations are coming into consumer packaged goods asking a lot of questions, reading the labels, carrying image, but
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
badge value of a brand, but also really understanding what's in the product. Because as they care about image, they also want to make sure they're walking up and down the street with something in their hand that stands for what they stand for and that's going to be transparent and consistent. And to your point, does big food and big beverage deliver that for them? Probably not.
Yeah.
Probably not.
You guys have been on a journey getting back to Zevia on your ingredient list. If you go back 10 years, you guys had more erythritol, whatever you say that. Like you had more kind of sure yet like it wasn't just pure stevia, but at some point
Yeah.
you guys made that commitment. So kind of love to hear a little bit about your thought on the journey. And then also, are you looking at new sweeteners? Like I think in our conversation before, we had a pre-conversation, we talked about like protein-based sweeteners. So are you evaluating the landscape and what that may mean for
Yeah.
you guys?
Yeah, it's always cool to talk to someone really well informed about this. So thank you for that question. We aim to always use natural, zero sugar, non nutritive, and thus non glycemic index spiking sweeteners. And we'll always use the best one on the market. Best means it's cleanest and it tastes great. And right now, that best solution by far are the molecules available within the stevia leaf? Why do I word it that way and say like stevia leaf extract? Because there are 20 molecules in the stevia leaf that can sweeten a
Mm,
product. Our job is to go extract the ones that perform best within beverage. And so we're really pleased,
got
as
it.
you say, we've evolved over the last 12 plus years on, the simplicity of our offering. We have the fewest ingredients of any soda on the market. And why? Because we've really learned how to use stevia the best way. We don't use any binding agents like erythritol. There's no monk fruit or any other ingredients that we're playing with to improve the taste deliverable. And most recently, we've had really what I'll call a breakthrough in flavor profile, which is why I'm so into this strawberry lemon burst. Is it's demonstrative of what I think the future of Zevia's taste profile will be, which is a much more sugar-like taste experience. So like richer on the tongue, if
Mm,
you will,
mhm.
no aftertaste. And so people are tasting creamy root beer, which is a great
That's
way
my
to
favorite flavor,
deliver.
by the way. The root beer is
It's
my
amazing.
go-to. Yeah.
Do you remember the campaign of a margarine company called I Can't Believe It's Not Butter?
Oh
And their
yeah.
campaign was I Can't Believe It's Not Butter, right?
Yeah. Are you gonna
So
do? I can't believe it's not root beer at some
well,
point.
when people drink creamy root beer, the comment is always, "I can't believe this doesn't have sugar in it." And
Yeah.
so we asked ourselves, like, how can we get that effect in every flavor? And it was harder with the lighter fruity flavors. So recently, we've had a bit of a breakthrough with a stevia leaf extract, using it a little bit differently with some other natural flavors, which are effectively essences of fruits. And that delivery now is super smooth. So for the part of the population that have had like a negative experience with stevia, they're going to need to come back and try Zevia. And I think they're going to be blown away at the flavor profile. And this is like just a little
Yeah.
peek ahead at how much opportunity there is if we continue to get this right.
I love doing a podcast with a fellow Gen Xer because all our references are on point with the Gen X. We did it. I can't believe it's not butter. New Coke. What else have we talked about? But you guys sound like you're continuing to evolve and get the best science around making and getting the best out of stevia. And the thing
That's
about
right.
stevia is you guys haven't had stevia hasn't had the type of negative headlines I think monk fruit has with the alcohol sweeteners. And like I
That's
think
right.
there's a study around potential because a lot of times it's with erythritol or whatever. And there's been heightened.
Erythritol. Hmm.
Yeah, I wish I
Yeah.
could pronounce that.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't worry. You need to forget that one. We don't need it in the world.
Right. And that there's like, but that's been associated with heightened stroke risk, for example. But
Mhm.
you haven't seen that with stevia, which has been great for you
That's
guys.
right. Because it's just such a simple product. It is
Yeah.
it is a plant extract. And so, I think if we try to keep these conversations simple, like, would you rather have your product sweetened by something that grows in the ground or is made in a lab? Like, that's a pretty good place to start from a health perspective. But we invite the science and leverage the science as well. Stevia was approved for use by the FDA in 2008. So, like, that wasn't that long ago, at least from our perspective
Mm.
as Gen X. So
Yeah.
there's decades ahead of us of continuing to improve the use of the various molecules within this plant that can sweeten a beverage. And what I'm really pleased to see is that now we can use it again without any binding agents or any other incremental ingredients and just keep it as simple and clean as possible. Our product's clear. I know you probably know that as a
Yep.
Zevia drinker, but no artificial colors. Like, we are just consistently trying to make everything as clean as possible and try to communicate that in different ways to the consumer.
One of the things we talked about in our other conversation was the use of, and this is just, it's on my mind. I'm probably talking about it too much. But I'm writing a report on it
Hmm.
right now about the impact of AI on
Hmm.
businesses. And so you guys are obviously creating a consumer package good, but you said that you are thinking a lot about how you can leverage AI in the operational sense of things in just
Hmm.
day to day in Zevia. Can you give us any insights how you guys are
Sure.
maybe thinking about maybe changing the business, making yourself more efficient?
Yeah, I mean, again, as I said before, we're less than 100 people. We're a small organization. So we certainly don't have a data center of excellence and a massive IT department. We got two dudes.
Two
So
dudes.
what is exactly? So what is our? Although we have a wildly diverse organization, but yes, our two folks in IT happen to be dudes. But what's our approach of AI? It's really a hacker's approach. And what do I mean by that? Each department head challenges their entire team, not just their senior leadership, to come with new use cases for AI. And then they're reporting them back up departmentally. And then we're rolling this up. In fact, we're doing this in July and sharing out the use cases that are kind of that we want to shine a light on from each department. And they vary from creating consumer like prototypes through AI and then interviewing that consumer prototype to get feedback about our product, which is like crazy. Like
Oh
I'm not
wow.
saying that's going
It's
to
like
replace
digital
consumer
digital
research.
twin type of concepts.
Yeah, exactly. And you can go deep on the briefing, to who you want this person to be based on your actual insights from the consumer, and then you can bounce ideas that persona. But we use AI to challenge our thinking and our assumptions. We're starting to use AI in what could sound like boring but process driven ways, in operations and in finance, and it's just saving work. I've been told that we're never going to write a PowerPoint again, but we're starting to play with how might don't tell my board this, but how might our board decks be generated by AI? Look, the thinking's still going to come for us, but the layout and design and the order of communication could be reconsidered with the help of AI. So we've got dozens, I don't want to say hundreds at this stage, but dozens of use cases that come from like a hacker culture. And I think there's tremendous potential. And my goal is not to like reduce the size of our organization because of AI, which is always the topic. Like it
Mhm.
always goes back to that. No, our, our goal is to do great work faster because of AI. Like we want to grow faster because of our ability to leverage AI with the people that we have in the building today. So we think there's tremendous potential, and we're stoked to have AI take some of the work that we don't even want to do off of our hands so we can do the work that requires creative and original human thinking.
You guys are pretty well positioned, I think, in the current moment, if we want to term it this way, the Maha moment, where there's like, hey, let's get artificial
Mhm.
colors. You just mentioned how you don't have artificial colors in your drinks. What are you thinking about the moment we're in and what it means for Zevia and the broader beverage
Yeah.
category?
Well, it's funny because like, you almost can't talk about this without being political, but you can talk about it without being partisan. Because at
Yeah.
the end of the day, we're talking about people and health, right? So I think we're very ready for this moment, we being Zevia as a company, because if there will be actual authentic, sustained, and maybe even legislative focus on lower processing, ingredient transparency, fewer, healthier ingredients, like that is like the definition of our product. If we're going to commit to sugar avoidance, we all of a sudden could play a major role in strategy. Like, imagine if high schools across America had vending machines with Zevia. You're solving problems right, left, and center by building healthy habits at a young age.
Yeah.
So taking the political side out of it, but certainly taking the partisan piece out of it, I would love for people to eat more simple foods that are grown in the ground. I would love people to hydrate with products that don't require preservatives or need to sort of have an infusion of things that we've never heard of before to make radical claims about what it's going to do for your health. I mean, this product has the health profile of sparkling water. So if that's the type of product that's going to be ratcheted to the top while putting pressure on whether we call it ultra processed foods or unnecessary additives, I mean, the standards in our country, they are lower than most of, let's call it, our peer jurisdictions
Mm-hmm.
around the world. They are lower. And so for us to raise our standards, I think as a consumer and as a citizen, I say bring it on. And as a business person, I would say we're here to help and we're ready for this moment because of the simplicity of our product and the fact that it can be a replacement for so many things that are straight up not good for us. And I think that's been proven.
So the board probably comes together and says, "Hey, this is something that we're hearing about. What should we do as a company?" I feel like boards all over the landscape over the past 2 or 3 years have talked about come together and say, "Hey, what are we going to do about this GLP-1 thing, this Ozempic?
Yeah.
Maybe it doesn't impact the beverage world as much, but I would imagine you guys have had some conversations because maybe it
Yeah.
actually dovetails well with you as a brand. But what do you see happening? Is this something you could leverage to take advantage of to kind of fuel growth
Yeah.
for Zevia?
I think we have never sought to be associated with weight loss or in a
Mm,
conversation about body type, but we are focused on health. So if there is a movement away from sugar and if folks need dietary options in beverage and in food to support them in that journey, we are well positioned for that. So oftentimes the question is asking me, hey, GLP-1, is that a tailwind or headwind? I would say it's a tailwind, meaning people are avoiding sugar and they're still going to want sweet, tasty treats at certain parts of the day, and we can be a part of that solution. So, with the use of a GLP-1, obviously people are starting to reduce consumption. And then if you're a snack company, you're going, but why? Because they're avoiding taking in calories, and we don't have any.
Yeah.
right? So we're a good partner to someone on a health journey, whether it's weight loss or not, and if it's weight loss, whether it's assisted by medicine or not.
Yeah.
Have you seen any of our totally skipping topics from GLP-1, although I'm happy to come back to it. Have you seen any of our work with Jelly Roll, the crossover artist called Jelly Roll?
No, no, I haven't.
All right, so check it out. Just give it a search online. Jelly Roll is a huge crossover artist, largely country music
I
star,
know
but
Joey Roll is.
okay, you know who he is.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
great.
yeah, yeah.
So he's an amazing human. He's super authentic. If you think about being like the radically real people's champion, he's like square into that category. And we did a campaign with him all through the first half of this year that was sort of inspired by the Cindy Crawford ad with Pepsi at the gas station. Except instead of Cindy Crawford getting out of a red sports car, it's Jelly
Amazing.
Roll getting out of a red pickup
Amazing.
truck.
More Gen
Now,
X references.
totally, they'll keep coming.
You must have greenlit that one.
I did. I will. I'm going to take blame, but not credit. But what's great is that like millennials and Gen Z that watch this ad had no idea about the Cindy Crawford reference, but totally were tracking with us on our poking fun at celebrity endorsement with a celebrity endorsement. Now, why did Jelly Roll become such a perfect spokesperson? He's on this incredible health journey. He's lost 100 pounds, but he's not preachy or self-righteous. In fact, he participates in this 5K series and he invites people to just kind of get up off the couch and come participate. They don't even time them. The win is like participation and completion. So it all comes back to just like we invite people to just try to do a little bit better, just one
Yeah.
thing at a time, And
I
that's
mean,
why GLP-1 can be tailwind. That's why Jelly Roll is a great spokesperson. That's why Maha is we're ready for that moment. I tie all this together just to be like, hey, let's simplify this.
that's super interesting. Yeah, I don't know. Have you had other celebrity endorsers? Because he speaks of, I think, authenticity, and I'm not like listening to him very often, but like you can't not have a face tattoo and have gone to jail and be a famous artist and not be somewhat authentic. Because I think that's part of
Yeah.
his big brand.
No, that's totally right. And so he's like a face tattoo. And yes, he was incarcerated and like that's kind of a part of his brand. And yet he's this big warm teddy bear. But that's the
Yeah, he
important
is.
part,
He is. I
right?
know
Like
that about him. Right.
it's
Right.
all the polarity of this personality, but he is as real as it gets. And we've been so
So was that fun?
pleasantly
Was that a fun like
surprised.
board meeting when you brought Joey Roll in to meet the board? Was that a fun
Oh yeah.
conversation?
Yeah. Well, I think what was the most fun, and I regret I wasn't there, but our CMO, Kirsten Soares, and members of her team were out in the desert at that original gas station where yeah,
Oh,
exactly, hanging out with Jelly Roll and they were listening in on the shoot and they heard him say something like, well, or a director or somebody said, oh, well, that's what corporate wants. We want to do another shot with corporate. And Kirsten came out from behind the set and was like, hey, I'm corporate. And they have since really just built a relationship because we're not corporate. Like we're just a bunch of people trying to get something done in the world that he supports. So it was really fun to find that there was a real relationship there. He loves the brand. He's become a great authentic, to your point, spokesperson for us.
100 people. Did you say 100 or 200 people? 100
Yeah,
people.
just under 100 people.
You guys truly are punching above your weight to run a pretty, I mean, 20,000 points of presence or distribution points.
Yeah,
Like it's
40,000 outlets now.
40,000
Yeah. Yeah.
with the less 100 people. That's amazing. You guys are
Yeah,
really kind of
it's
punching above your weight.
proud of the entrepreneurial vibes in our company. And of course, we'll need to grow in order to grow, right? But the foundation of our organization is scalable. And now as we invest in, folks in marketing and sales, to continue to drive distribution and build demand, we've got such a scalable setup now that we're a couple of years into being a public company.
Okay, really quickly before we wrap it up, your
Yes.
journey, we knew that you were at Red Bull. What did you want to do when you like came out of college when you were young? I mean, did you think you'd be like a beverage executive for most of
No,
your
I
career?
never even thought about it. I think I drank exclusively water all the way through college. I was a track and field athlete, never even thought about working
Not
in
even
beverage.
beer. I drank mostly beer through
I didn't
college,
even
but
do
yeah, okay.
beer. I didn't even drink alcohol. I was such a nerd. All I did was train for track and field. So, and I really was a nerd. There's some callers bring in to verify anyone that knew me at James Madison in the 80s and 90s. But coming out of school, I moved from Virginia, where I went to school, down to Atlanta, in
Hmm.
part because the Olympics were coming up in 96. I had run in the 1992 Olympic trials, didn't make the team,
Oh,
and was
wow.
really a long shot, right? But I had this dream of continuing to train leading up to that. And if I was going to try to be in sports, I wanted to work in sports. So I got a job with the Atlanta Hawks. I was lucky enough to get an
Oh, very
internship
cool.
there and a work in basketball. When the Olympics came around, I had retired already post injury, and probably because I just wasn't that fast. but I had the opportunity to work on the Atlanta committee for the Olympic Games and help produce some of the events.
That's
And so I
amazing.
really saw myself with this career in sports. And that's actually how I got recruited away from sports by Red Bull, because Red Bull just was such a sort of rich history, even at the early stage in sports. They were creating the same thing in the United States and hiring a number of us out of the sports world. There was a certain attitude and culture that came with sort of ex-athletes and people coming out of sports marketing that really helped to build that brand. Yeah, I thought that I would be in sports and media my whole life. And I was in sports and media for a good 25 years.
Oh, wow. When did you start at Atlanta Hawks?
93.
Was Dominique still there?
Dominique was there. We traded him my first year.
Okay.
And I was the consumer affairs intern that had to go to middle schools and take questions from the kids after our stay in school jamboree. And the first question, well, sometimes the first question are why are the Hawks so sorry? The second question, why'd y'all trade Dominique? We took so much heat for that.
For those millennials and Gen Zers listening, he was like the best dunker besides Michael Jordan in the 80s and 90s. And I have a funny story. I was going to
The
Seattle
human
Pacific
highlight
University.
film.
He
The
was.
human
And I was.
highlight film.
He was a nice guy. I was going to Seattle Pacific University, and we
Oh,
decided to do a crank call when he was in town to play the Sonics.
oh
Rest
my
in peace,
gosh.
Supersonics. And I called the hotel he's staying at, and they put me through. And I said I was a shoe salesman, and would he do an advertisement for me? And he said yes. And then I told him that I was a college student, and he let us come down and meet him. So he's a super nice guy.
Kidding me.
No, but
I can't believe he
hey,
can just hang up on you.
can you believe you actually could just call like famous
No,
basketball players and
no.
and
He
then he's
is
nice enough to not get mad at us.
he is an amazing human being. We are loosely in touch still today through Instagram. He used to call me shortcakes because, I'm not particularly tall, especially compared to those guys. And he's
Shortcakes.
an ambassador for the Atlanta Hawks, as long as he'll be on the planet. He's a great Atlantan, a great ambassador within that city, and a good dude. Yeah, he's definitely a good dude. But those were some times in the 90s in the NBA. There were a lot of characters.
That's a great time. Boy, I think we've mined enough Gen X nostalgia today to fill a couple podcasts. But Amy Taylor, this has been so much fun. And like I said, I'm a fan of Zevia, a big root beer fan. And so thank you for spending time and tell us about where you guys are going.
Yeah, y'all are awesome. I super appreciate you having us on. Looking
right.
forward to the next chapter. Thanks so much.
We'll talk soon.
All right, take care.
That was it. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Amy Taylor. If you are not already a fan of Zevia, you should try it out. It's great. I love the root beer, as I talked about on the podcast. If you haven't already tried listening to some of the many new podcasts we've launched over the past 3 or 4 months, please do so. Go to thespoon.tech, click on podcasts, check out many of the great podcasts, including one from Mike Lee, the season finale, which I am a guest on, where we talk about a whole bunch of things that are happening in the world of food. And Mike leads a great, fun, and interesting conversation. So check that out as well as the other ones. Once again, a reminder, our Smart Kitchen Summit is virtual this year. It's over a span of 10 days. Mike Lee will be there, Amy Taylor will be there, and Mark Cuban is going to headline it. So please check it out. Tickets are really affordable. Use the discount code podcast for 15% off. All right, folks, that's it for now. We'll talk to you very soon.
If you enjoyed this episode, why not share it with a friend? And don't forget to give us a 5-star review. You'll find more content like this on thespoon.tech/podcasts.